After the famed firebrand of the Shadow Siren seized the land, a new challenger was selected. The people voted, and after a vote, the results proved to be rather decisive. People clamored for Miss Mouse to take center stage once more. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. A recount was held for who would be the next to receive a reprise, and close as it were, the verdict was reached. Bobbery, the captain of the concussive, aka Admiral Annihilation, is a partner that packs a real wallop in Paper Mario with a 1,000-year door. Much like the previous subject of partners in this series of reprises, Bobbery has been given the spotlight before, and he actually fared rather well, but I think he could do better. Once again, we're starting from the beginning. The very beginning. Will it be a boom bossa boom festival, or is this old timer going to prove to be just a dud? Let's find out! Sit back, crack open some succulent Chocola-Cola, and watch this video to the very end. All aboard! It's showtime! The run starts proper after the initial fight with Lord Crump. Using practice codes for this game made by Zephylus, I'm able to make Bobbery an available partner from the very beginning, as opposed to being the final partner you recruit in your journey. Oddly, he had only 10 max HP though, but hopefully that'll fix itself later. This opens up a number of options right off the bat, as you can likely imagine. We start the game with a bomb after all. Expect the balance to be downright busted. So the first thing I do is Stuparong Roadport to collect these things called star pieces and then open up the way to Dazzle, a star piece collector who trades you beneficial badges for star pieces you bring to him. Normally he's inaccessible until after you encounter the 1,000-year door, but Bobbery's like, I used to be an admiral in the war, you will see me now! And being so assertive, the game has no choice but to relent. So we grab Happy Flower, a badge that restores 1 FP about 33% of the time if memory serves correctly. With 0 viable options for badges for a while, it really would not hurt to pick this up and equip it. Afterwards, we'll want to take Gus out. It's here we get into Bobbery's moves. He starts with Bomb and Bomb Squad. Bomb is a standard attack, doing a whopping 4 damage if the action command is successful. It's actually very strong this early in the game, being equal in power to Mario's Super Hammer, a Chapter 3 upgrade. Bomb Squad, however, is a little more special. For 3 FP, Bobbery will toss 3 mini bombs that will detonate 2 turns later, doing 3 damage per bomb. This move is insanely good against foes without defense, as the damage at base rank is more than double Bobbery's bomb if all 3 explosions hit 1 target. There are more nuances to do with this move, but they're not relevant for now. Hopefully Happy Flower activates at least once after using the move, but regardless, just know that Gus is a very non-threatening opponent. You'll probably be tempted to head to Westside Roadport given we can, but there isn't really much worth thinking about the gate. There are some more star pieces, a badge worth some coins, and a shine sprite, but you actually want to wait until later to do any of that, trust me. Instead we'll deal with the Goomba trio on the right side. My first question though, what the heck do these 3 see in freaking Professor Frankly? I mean look, they're totally hitting on him. They mention a fine looking Goomba around the tubby mustache, and look for yourself who's actually sporting them. Change my mind if otherwise. Anyways, despite Bobbery's bomb not being able to reach the Pair Goomba in battle, Bomb Squad's explosion actually does reach, meaning even with odd items, Bobbery has no problems winning this fight. Unfortunately, I didn't have the FP to actually use Bomb Squad and Happy Flower refused to activate. Worse yet, the Pair Goomba was holding a Fire Flower, and after a little more damage from the Spiky Goomba, Bobbery was knocked out. Wow. I couldn't even lose the fight as Mario can only defend, and switching partners isn't an option because all partners not named Bobbery have their HP set to 0 so they can't interfere. There's only one exception, but that won't be until halfway through the game. You're free to guess, though I almost guarantee you'll get it right. Go ahead, comment what you think. So I'm forced to break the primary rule of not letting Mario fight, where the stage only then steps in to speed up my suffering by taking the Pair Goomba out. And I reset from there. Oh yeah, see my max HP? Yeah. It fixed itself. Blooper is also a pretty easy opponent to handle. Bomb Squad has no problems reaching airborne targets, and doing 3 damage takes the tentacles out in 1 hit. And since bombs on the left will detonate first, the 2 defense Blooper has almost become a non-factor. I do however question why Bobbery moves so far to the right to bomb Blooper's tentacle though, but we're able to win before Blooper even gets a chance to use his ink. Admiral Bobbery had this fight harpooned. First impressions already show that Bobbery's strong and is less of an attack that can target foes no matter where they are. This means he's less reliant on items to do damage, which is great because Bobbery's old and remembers the time where 10 coins can buy you 20 pieces of butterscotch as opposed to 2 Big Macs at McDonald's. So he's going to be pinching his pennies wherever he can. This is to say we can't spend our coins on items. Badges will be up for purchase, but that's it. There are no enemies required to fight on the way to Petalburg, but after beginning to trek the Shrunk Fortress, we encounter regular enemies, which act as pseudo mini-bosses. Bomb Clefs are the first up, and they're not a challenge at all to dispatch. Bombs 4 damage can one-shot them both with perfect damage, leading to a very clean victory. Should have looked into getting a stash like yours truly. I'm like a bully by the name of Chief Chili. You can't step up to me without a stash. Bristles are less easy to take care of though. Bobbery can't directly approach them on account of their spikes, and even if he could, they have just enough defense to match his damage. We simply have no choice but to use one of our 2 free power blocks here to continue. Last obstacle is just a quiz where this Gruntilda-looking Thwompbust asks us math questions, but with mathematical like Finn the Human.
What's 9 plus 10?
21?
You stupid!
Looking at the fuzzies down within Shrunk Fortress, there's little to really say. Like most fights against regular enemies, I find these encounters rather tedious, seeing how Bobbery has no issues one-shotting them with bomb, and basic guards prevent any HP from being stolen. Gold Fuzzy is especially easy to cruise past though, as Bomb Squad can deal 9 damage out of its max 10 HP, with the Fuzzy Horde being unable to even act if you fill the bomb action command on purpose afterwards. To say this fight was over before it even started feels like a severe understatement. Within Hooktail Castle, red bones are dispatched quickly thanks to Bomb Squad. Aiming 2 between the second dull bones and red bones, and 1 between the 2 backbones dull bones will do the trick, with one last bomb taking out the front dull bones. Just don't be too slow as you do it because otherwise, your aim will be forced to be at some random timing. By the way, if you think Coops isn't needed to complete Hooktail Castle, think again. This one room with lift blocks can't be completed with Bobbery as far as I know. It just takes too long to push Bobbery off and then run for the yellow block to get a ride. So Coops is still necessary. Even if he wasn't, how can you say no to him? It isn't like we need to feed him. Though there is stuff we can collect with Bobbery that we can't with Coops, like the up arrow way before finishing chapter 5. Despite this, we can't give it to Merlon until later. So much for that. But what we can do with Coops by our side that Bobbery can't do is net us the Ultra Hammer for Mario right now. What it involves is for Coops to be first deployed on the right side of Zesty's kitchen, while you move parallel to the cutscene trigger where Mario steps on the contact lenses. Then after letting Coops go, you need to fire a second shell toss, but before it can actually be fired in front of Mario, move downwards to activate the cutscene. What you'll then see is that shell toss isn't used, but a jump in fact is executed. What has happened here is that the jump we attempted is stored, allowing us to jump off the stair of Tullibro's Bazaar and fly into the air, landing on top of the Ultra Hammer chest. We can then fidget around at the edge of the stand where the chest is and grab the Ultra Hammer well before we're supposed to actually get it. This can be failed pretty easily though. If you don't move far enough into the background, you'll hit something and lose your momentum. Also, try to not fall into jail as you do this. I had it happen once and it made me long for the sweet release of death. Since we're in the area, we may as well also rank up Bobbery up to super rank as there's no longer any reason to stay away from the western section of Rogueport, which includes an extra shine sprite among other goodies. It really doesn't matter much what we do though, as Holdfast is a pretty niche move. It basically gives Bobbery counter status, making direct attacks deal recoil damage back to the attacker. It's pretty useless against most bosses, but I can find the use for it later. Now, I hate to be a bearer of surprises, that's a lie, but Hooktail the first boss is also pretty much Bomb Squad fodder. We don't even bother using Mega Rush P here, Bobbery doesn't really have much use for it. Super Ring Bobbery ironically has an equal amount of HP to Hooktail when you count both for starting and second phase. Regardless, despite having a point of defense, it's only 1 point, and Bomb Squad still does 6 damage across all 3 bombs per use, allowing Bobbery to knock Hooktail out in 6 turns. 4 turns for phase 1, 2 turns for phase 2. In case you were wondering by the way if Bomb Squad can hurt Hooktail when she's off stage and the bombs are on, man, I didn't think I'd still be learning new stuff about this game. You can expect Chapter 2 to also lack much to really share. If you can beat Chapter 1 without using attack effects R for Hooktail, Chapter 2 will be a strictly easier chapter regarding its bosses. The Shadow Sirens, for example, can be outright obliterated in 2 turns with Bomb Squad. Throw 3 bombs between Beldam and Marilyn, and 3 more between Marilyn and Vivian, you're set to go. Oh, don't worry about Vivian surviving another turn, she's got plot armor. You're probably expecting there to be nothing to say about Magnus von Grapple as well. True as that may be, I'd be remiss if I didn't follow up on what I said in my previous video, which, well, Let's just say I'm a man of my word. I said I'd make this game sorry, I will make it sorry. Partway through the Great Tree, Lord Crumb captures the punities with a trap before running off. But we're used to jailbreaks. I mean, we already have a bomb after all. What we can do after escaping and acquiring the spin jump skill from Mario is, well, leave Chapter 2 entirely by returning to Rogue Pursuers, and activating the warp pipes to access later areas like Chapter 6's Poshly Heights early. Interacting with the lock on the Poshly Sanctum will make the game think we're in Chapter 6, allowing us to collect many different key items otherwise unobtainable until later in the game, like the various parlor cards from the Pianta Parlor. But before doing any of that, we can also just give Merlin the up arrow, as it'll tell us how to get it now when rank Bobbery up to Ultra Rank, giving him an additional 10 HP max for a total of 40 HP, and the all too notorious Bob Bass skill, hitting all enemies with an attack power of 8 for 9 FP.
What? What the f?
But what do you do when you want to turn a book to an earlier chapter? How are you going to fight the rest of the bosses before then? Or get the other partners you need now that you skipped them? Elementary, my dear Watson. Just return to the Great Tree where the punies judge you for your sins outside the tree, ground pound the spin jump paddle where the cage or crumb set up for you was, and proceed to then play the game as normal with your now entirely souped up Bobbery set on lane waves to everything that moves. You can probably imagine, given all of this, that Magnus from Grapple is not going to handle Ultra Rank Bobbery well at all. Bomb does a whole 5 damage to him, and even with the X-Fist deployed, 4 damage is honestly nothing when you have a maximum of 40 HP. Even if it was, you can Bob on Bats so wipe the fist out instead of actually needing to deal with their damage. Huh, contrary to what I initially thought, Chapter 2 was actually pretty fun to talk about. Who would have thought? Don't worry though, in return, no one make it a rule to ban super guards on my videos, cause people have an issue with being able to block out damage with the press of a button. I may do it a few times and they don't matter, and if you have an issue with that, though you can probably expect Chapter 3 to be comparatively short. It's pretty common knowledge already that Yoshi is the only partner, or even the only character, only thing really, that can beat the Armored Harriers. The barrier keeping anyone from progressing to the Major League. Bobbery otherwise has no problem just exploding into everything in his path. I mean, if he can reach level 50 in the Pit of Wonder Trials on his own this early in the adventure, that should be a given. So we're just going to opt to steal the thing, deny signing the contract, spin jump onto the Comfort and Grubba's office, leave, walk back in thanks to your Ultra Hammer, and skip straight to the end of Chapter 3 to fight Macho Grubba. Oh, to be a pirate. I feel so free!
Do what you want cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate!
I know, people would be happy just to see me use Yoshi if I named the Bobbery, but I'd like to flex that I did that joke before on an earlier partner-only reprise anyway. See, Flurry's come back for more. Despite our level being on the lower side, Bobbery is very powerful for this point in the game. Bomb on its own can do 6 damage per hit at Ultra Rank, which is a whole 10th of Grubba's max HP. And depending on Grubba's status, we can react in kind with another move to explode him as hard as possible. If his attack or defense is increased, Bomb will still be worth using. But if dodgy status is enabled or Boo makes Grubba invisible, Hold Fast may actually be worth using simply because you're better off doing recoil back at Grubba over just missing entirely. Though the times where Grubba has only one turn of fast status left, you have little reason to not just use Bomb Squad twice and score 18 damage guaranteed in 2 turns. Just don't aim for his tail, guess his hitbox doesn't extend that far. Come what may, Bobbery just manhandles Grubba no matter what he might try to do, as is to be expected. Wrestling is fake, but Bobbery is toughened by the seas. Man probably fought in all 4 world wars. There's no longer any putting out of Chapter 4 and the tricky trek to Twilight Town. It is true that without Yoshi, it will be considerably harder to reach the pipe. Regardless, you can also just use a second save file to store a super jump and ignore all this hassle if you think ahead. And since you're required to access Twilight Town twice, don't mind if I do. After all, this trick is double frame perfect otherwise if you use Coops. Yoshi may not be by our side yet, but we don't need him at all for Twilight Trail or Creepy Steeple anyway. Make sure you pick up Eve's Shooting Star, though you really don't need to worry about attack items since Bobbery's explosions tend to be plenty effective enough to damage whatever we encounter. But you never know, they can make some future fights easier at least. Once we make our way through the Twilight Trail and up the Creepy Steeple though, I do think we should go for Atomic Boo. This is a fight where Bobbery's basic attack won't reach, so your only options are either Bob-on-Bast or Bomb Squad. Hopefully Atomic Blue never becomes invisible, but if it does because of the audience, you're going to be set back a bit. In that case, Bob-on-Bast could be more reliable, though I personally wouldn't recommend it since you'd be sacrificing a lot of FP per attack. This is, however, the area where golden leaves become available and we get Double Dip P, a badge that allows you to use 2 items in a single turn. So assuming you have about, say, 20 FP max, the more expensive option can at least be considered thanks to being more reliable. This either way is still rather easy. Even more so can be said for Gonzalez, which is amazing as he's the strongest boss so far. Having less HP than Macho Grubba, Bomb Squad is predictably superb here. And when combined with regular rolled bombs, this fight will not be long at all. Thing is, he like Hooktail can cheat death and after hitting 0 HP, rebounded to 10 after stealing Mario's shadow, so that's the second boss so far to pull a pseudo live stream on us. By the way, I finally got around to checking this. Turns out Gonzalez isn't his name. Well, so much for that. The rematch with Gonzalez, Dupless, is pretty interesting. You'll still be forced to start and end the fight with Vivian active, but that's hardly a problem when Bomb Squad can do damage whether Bobbery is active or not. Simply reduce Dupla's HP to where he'll follow the Bomb Squad, switch Vivian in, and voila. This, for the record, is an exception I was talking about before, as the game will crash if Vivian is not active here. So if you said this challenge was obviously impossible because you did Yoshi for Chapter 3, first to have guessed wrong gets your comment pinned and my viewers will let the rise civilly at you. Like this. And the fight itself is otherwise barely any different from the first, except Dupless can just choose to do less damage if he jumps. And the funny thing about all of this, ordinarily, you're stuck using a base rank Vivian. We're using an ultra rank Bobbery here. Talk about excessive. Following that fight, we're given Yoshi as a partner, as the game assumes you must have had him earlier so that when he was stolen from you, he can be given back. Afterwards, we take Bobbery to the bar to remind him that he's a widower, and he sees for himself that Podley up and denied his late wife's last wish.
Hey bro, watch your jet. Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet!
Chapter 5 has a lot of embers to watch out for, but they funnily enough are weak to explosions. Not like it matters though, as Bomb & Bash is a cold and clean OKO regardless of elemental weakness. And regardless of defenses, Cortez was never going to be a real obstacle for Bobbery either. This is where Bomb Squad's property of dealing damage across different enemy phases becomes notable. On top of Bomb's just dizzying power here, especially when backed by Power plus P, Cortez has a low HP stat per phase, having only 20 HP max. You can even destroy his second phase on the same turn as his first, by hitting with a few bombs, then chucking 2 sets of bomb squads to finish his first phase off, and take out phase 2 before he even gets a chance to attack. Bomb Squad also does well in phase 3, allowing Bobbery to potentially skip his audience HP steal if you lower him to a range where Bomb & Bash can KO with Bomb Squad. I couldn't because I lacked the FP and wanted to be a little cheapy the cheapskate, but what can you do? Lord Crump stands little chance against the Bomb Squad either. Good thing too, as the X-Nauts blocking the way to him could otherwise force an unhealthy reliance on Bob & Bast, which we definitely can't spam. It's actually pretty funny how this otherwise mid-lane move known as Bomb Squad is actually a real juggernaut early game encountering Bobbery's otherwise limited attack range. It's a veritable Swiss Army knife with good aim. We're only now seeing the game catch back up to our power level, and it's catching back up fast. Now it's Chapter 6 being next up on our radar. Picking up some Kila Mangoes is recommended, alongside at least a couple of golden leaves. May not actually need them, but better safe than sorry. Now let's discuss Smorg. Bobbery's high HP means he actually doesn't really mind taking hits too much, while having plenty of time to deal actual damage. In fact, by the time I was ready to close the fight out, I actually had to waste time and ended up not even needing Double Dip to win. Though Smorg is listed as having a point of defense, I actually am relying more on Bomb Squad here, as Smorg's defense with no miasmas is 0. In fact, I actually have both Mario and Bobbery's copy of P down D up, because believe it or not, Bobbery's Bomb Squad, while it doesn't scale with extra attack, it also doesn't become weaker with reduced attack. The Power and Mega Rush badges also just tend to be so strong, they make up for Bobbery's lost power to allow defeating Smorg in a reasonable amount of time. As we do our thing in attacking Smorg, we'll need to have an HP of either 10 or 9 after dealing about 14 damage between Bomb Squad and a basic bomb hit. Once our HP falls low enough, which may take Bobbery defending if Mario gets targeted more than not, we'll use our Courage Shell to allow our guards to block all damage, provided we're able to keep them up. Ideally, we're given a chance to reduce the number of miasmas. Soon after, we can launch another Bomb Squad as well as an attack item to allow us to hit Smorg one less time before we see the claw emerge. If our HP is 9 or 10, we're essentially set provided Mario is healthy or at a high HP value, provided while in danger, and will end in peril, giving Bobbery the necessary power to brute force through the claw and KO in 2 more attacks. The game tried to give me a scare with fog, but it didn't matter. While in Poshi Heights, there isn't much else to do beyond getting the Crystal Star. Except, well, the L emblem, but that's a given. Guess there isn't much else to talk about, so Chapter 7. We are pretty free to collect items in the moon with all our inventory space. Then is Magnus 2 Electric Boogaloo. Repeat after me.
New kitchen gun! Sparkles like new! Yeah, all clean again! Sparkles like new! I love you, kitchen gun! Just 3 shots from kitchen gun! Say goodbye! Yeah, all clean again! Sparkles like new!
Concerning Chapter 8, it is harder, but I can't say much for its difficulty because, well, Bobbery isn't exactly a slouch if you catch my drift. Dark Bones, for example, can be mowed over with just a couple of Power Plus Ps, turning the potent as is Bob and Bass into a veritable nuke. Gloomtail by comparison is a definitely more interesting boss. Even now, despite seeing bosses with actual defense behind them, we find more creative ways to use our tools to deal damage smart, hard, and fast. Surprise, surprise, we are actually still using Bomb Squad, and though this move is no more powerful despite having some badges boosting Bobbery's attack power, we can also just choose to use some items to help its damage still be as meaty as always, while buying Bobbery some critical time to get in damage. Much like with Vivian, I'm equipping both P up D down P and Defend plus P, so Bobbery is always taking 8 damage no matter what, so long as we guard only Gloomtail's Poison Breath. Safe to say, I did go into this with a plan. And it involves reaching peril using the damage Bobbery does to himself when we use Bomb Squad. Yes, you did hear that correctly. We're using Bomb Squad, but not all of the bombs are aimed at Gloomtail. No, only 2 of them are. The last one we're throwing straight up to hit Bobbery, so that we can reach peril after Bobbery knocks himself into danger with his own explosion. But before it goes off, we're using Double Dip. We use the Mr. Softener found in Chapter 4's Creepy Steeple, and you guessed it, a stopwatch. Not a reliable item, but you better believe we'll find use for it here. If it works, Gloomtail will be frozen in time, like an evil screaming space nut bookie hit by Rex Cargelot's freeze ray. And as you can tell from this cutscene, he forgot his slippery space-time underwear, so we're essentially home free, as the Bomb Squad does 3 damage to Bobbery and 6 damage to Gloomtail. Our bombs now deal 10 damage per hit, as Gloomtail's defense is still reduced and Power Rush is active. But once the statuses expire, you may think we're in trouble since we're doing only 8 damage, but Gloomtail will always use this Earthquake once his HP falls to 48 or less. And that Earthquake has a power of 10. That's way more than 5. But Last Stand P badges tend to be good for stuff like that. Our damage is reduced to 1/3 of what the move is capable of, taking the move down from 10 to only 4 damage, whether or not we guard. Now we're in peril where, thanks to Mega Rush P, Bomb's power has gone from 8 to 13. And since Gloomtail's next move is to charge a Mega Breath when his HP is 32 or less, we're given enough time to use the last of our FP and finish him off with a lethal Bob on Bast, dealing the final blow to his remaining 15 HP. Perfect damage, exact FP usage, a decisive victory. The rematch with the Shadow Sirens is another one of those fights that honestly just feels like it's an autopilot. It's very possible to lose, obviously, but there's very little reason to not just brute force this with 4 Bob on Bass if the game lets me do it. The most a Siren has for HP is Marilyn and Duplos with 40 apiece, so if you do 10 damage to all 3 per turn, this fight will end in only 4 turns. It's like a scholar's weight in chess. You do it if you don't respect your opponent, and often just to humiliate them because you don't believe they know basic principles of the game. At least by comparison, Grotus deserves to be taken a little more seriously. Similarly to Smorg, Bobbery's bomb can't do damage fresh out the gate. But unlike Smorg, you wouldn't want to blow 9 FP on Bob and Bast just to make Grotus vulnerable either. Bomb Squad can actually take the X's out just fine, and to do about 10 damage that the barrier Grotus has at the start doesn't block the incoming damage. Interestingly, Bobbery's explosions don't do less damage if Grotus X's are still alive, as Grotus' extra defense only blocks normal attacks, and Bobbery's bombs aren't normal, so expect these explosions to be used a lot. I talk about what Grotus himself can do, but you're really just at the whim of luck here. If he feels kind, he'll do nothing but counter status and waste turns like I do ours due to depression. But if he feels cruel, dodgy status and just attacking us in general will see our lack of resistance to piercing attacks do us in. I brought a few live streams as well, since I doubt I'll need them all for the Shadow Queen, but thanks to a combination of Bomb Squad just being a great move, and Grotus having a heart 3 sizes bigger than I initially thought, we won this in 2 attempts. I wonder, by the way, if y'all watching this video at home or on your phones were expecting to see Bomb Squad use this much. But the data checks out, it's a very versatile move. The fight with Bowser and Kammy Koopa demonstrates this rather well too, except here, we're actually going to see a lot of mileage gotten out of Holdfast as well. This is that fight I mentioned a long while ago, where Holdfast is actually insanely good, as it makes Volt Shrooms and Spike Pouches effectively obsolete. You can keep Bowser locked into only using his bite, so Mario was never hit by Fiery Breath more than once. Bomb Squad can still feast on Kammy Koopa's lack of defense meanwhile, and assuming no annoying magic is used to protect yourself like defense or invisibility, Bobbery is essentially home free, as once Kammy's out, there's nothing left to keep Bowser from slowly but surely losing.
This game is a dork!
Well crap. I actually don't think Kammy did anything that wasn't either sporadically attacking or healing Bowser, who often had 69 out of 70 HP due to Holdfast. But then we saw Trouble in Paradise when the game decided to spawn Fog to rescue Bowser from his special hell. I ended up using more items than I thought I'd need, including a life shroom. We win though, and I guess that's all that really matters. It's high tide. You know, I'd love to call the Shadow Queen a siren in a similar vein to those mermaids in the water that lead sailors to their doom. But this game already has the Shadow Sirens, and the Shadow Queen looks kinda ugly, not gonna lie. But alas. No matter how often I play this game, this fight feels like one that's impossible to be truly prepared for. My items are stacked, and yet this fight still made me struggle and claw through tooth and nail. The first phase was relatively simple, as I just used Bomb unless the Shadow Queen just got through with boosting her attack and defense. If she does that, I use Bomb Squad twice, as Bomb won't do much, and by the time the buffs expire, the Bomb Squad will detonate immediately after, and the damage can be pretty hefty. In return, however, she tends to love stealing my HP, which just delays the fight for longer, which is pretty awful when her attack is up since she can heal a lot. I even got distracted by her wily waves, and used Bomb Squad accidentally where she proceeded to capitalize on my blunder, and boost her stats, meaning I wasted FP and potential damage. Though I didn't use anything beyond the single Ultra Shroom, and I doubt I'd be able to save it with how this fight looked to play it anyway, so I can't be too disheartened. Phase 2 by comparison was mercifully short, as before dropping the Shadow Queen below 90 HP, I planned to Bomb Squad some distance apart from each other. The goal was to hit the Shadow Queen's separate hands, so this phase could end in only 1 turn as opposed to 3. Ordinarily, the Shadow Queen would react to only 1 hit per turn, but Bomb Squad is weird, and as long as the bombs don't interact with each other, they can separately progress the phase, where Bobbery just has to bomb 1 more time to initiate the cutscene before the final battle. And in Bobbery's part, we see Four Eyes and Flavio cheering us on. And those lot, in addition to the Bob-Bombs and Far Outposts giving Bobbery their energy, well, let's just say he'll need all the help he can get. Starting the true final battle, I went with a book move, used a Power Punch and a Shooting Star to allow myself to do as much damage as possible outside of peril, while limiting the Shadow Queen's healing, as the Shine Sprite Bingo will max my stats out after 3 successful attacks. The Shadow Queen meanwhile reacts in kind by charging just after the bingo, which actually puts me in the back foot, since I need more HP for what I have in mind for my point swap. After 2 Bob-Ombasts and a double dip, Bobbery can point swap into peril immediately, which gives me my only reliable chance to heal any heavy damage. But with less HP, Bob-Ombast can't be used as much. In hindsight, it probably wasn't a good idea to use the Jam and Jelly specifically to use an attack that gives only 2 extra damage, but letting the left and right hands remain would be unwise, as if they heal, that softens the blows I tried to deal, and we need all the damage we can get, as the Shadow Queen's defenses are pretty good already, and seeing she can boost her defense and attack at will, that can cause considerable problems. Dangerous Breath also can be obnoxious, and I ended up missing 1 guard that left Mario confused. But fortunately, Bobbery was making himself invisible with boost sheets, so Mario couldn't fumble about and burn a life stream through simping for his broad. Come on, Mario, she's a thought. You're better than that. Fortunately, Vivian didn't get force switched in, so the confused status ended up meaning absolutely nothing. By the way, you may have noticed that the Shadow Queen's dead hands are invisible. Yeah, I don't know why, but I can't see them. And it makes guarding the hand P a pain in Bobbery's port wheel if you catch my drift. She gave me an additional turn to blow her up though, since she chose to charge when Bobbery still had only 1 HP left. So I got off a ton of damage and Bobbery and Mario shared a life stream. But a factor that made things a lot more uncomfortable is that the Shadow Queen seems to have taken smart pills since the last turn. She's being a lot more strategic with burning my life streams, and before I knew it, I was all out. So I had to play really safe using my items to keep both Mario and Bobbery alive, while the Shadow Queen took advantage of my vulnerability and took it upon herself to suck me up with her hands. Get your head out of the gutter. And let me tell you, though Dangerous Breath on its own isn't that bad, the power it has hitting both Mario and Bobbery while the Shadow Queen's attack is boosted gets downright lethal, especially when combined with her ally hands. I ended up being forced to rely on Bob and Bash to try and regain momentum, but I only had the max FP to use it twice. And it isn't like the Shadow Queen can't switch for her left and right hands who can attack immediately after being summoned too. This song and dance continued as the Shadow Queen would weaken me, strengthen herself, and I desperately cling on to life using my last few healing items. Really what's most stifling is that Bobbery has no piercing attacks at all. When the Shadow Queen boosts her defense, it blocks a lot of damage I'd otherwise be dishing out. He has nothing like Vivian's Fiery Jinx or Koops' Shell Slam, and his damage tends to be a lot slower than what Mario himself, Yoshi, or Goombella are capable of. So we were in some dire docks. I even resorted to Bomb Squad here, going off what I knew about when she buffed herself phase 1, though it turns out the Shadow Queen has a smaller hitbox than I initially thought. Ended up using my final Ultra Shroom as Mario had only 2 HP left and it was time for a Hail Mary. As a last resort, I throw the stopwatch and tell the Shadow Queen she's been a bad girl. Surprisingly, she recognized me as her daddy and she goes into the corner for 3 turns. But not without trying to give me the hand, so I spanked it away. While she was in timeout, I noticed a pair of mushrooms in the top right corner. Did the Star Spirits hear my wish to prove Bobbery had dynamite? Because it sure feels like it. We are now making our last stand with Bobbery back in full force. With the Shadow Queen near death but her hands are back online, I use my final item and last Jammin' Jelly. Even now, I feel the odds are against us, but we actually have a chance now. And it's only compounded by the fact that the Shadow Queen swapped her left and right hands out once more, but once again buffed her sets. It's down to the wire. Bobbery continues onto the assault with more explosions, proving he's still got some firepower. Before much longer, the Shadow Queen tries one last time to damage us, but after the Mushroom Bingo, she can't hack it. One last Bob on Bass wipes out both her dead hands and the Queen herself, ending the fight with Bobbery finally having beaten all of Paper Mario, the 1,000-Year Door, all by himself. You know, I did the math. It looks like if that Mushroom Mango didn't happen, the way this fight was progressing, Bobbery was primed to win with only 1 HP left. The Poison Breath would have dropped into 6, and the Dead Hand Stampede would have done 5 damage as I had last Stampedes equipped. That actually had been crazy, but better safe than sorry, I guess. Part of me wants to try and beat the Pit of Manager Trials using only Bobbery, as he can definitely do it, but look at my items, okay? There's 0 chance of him winning with the sorry lack of reserves. But for now, at least we can answer the question of whether or not you can beat Paper Mario the 1,000-Year Door with only Bobbery all by himself. And well, technically no, as he's not available from the start. But if he was available, yeah, he can. Though it may also depend on whether or not you're willing to count Vivian subbing in while Bobbery's Bomb Squad closest to fight out to count. I don't have a problem with it since it isn't like she actually did any fighting, but you may have a different perspective. We also will have to update the leaderboard, as Bobbery has beaten the game at level 17, which is actually closer to Vivian than you might think, as she could have beaten Gloomtail at a slightly lower level than she did in her video. It just involved being willing to rely on the stopwatch later, so she can take advantage of payroll status for longer. So let's be nice and say she can beat the game at level 18. Either way, Bobbery is now 3rd place behind Flurry and Yoshi. As a partner, I'd say Bobbery is incredible early game. His lack of piercing and proneness to triggering stage hazards can be obnoxious, but Bomb Squad tends to afford a ton of versatility to him that make him more than a one-trick pony like Bombette in 64. And besides, if he can beat the game all by himself, this old dog clearly has some worthwhile tricks. Until we meet again, Admiral, may your sailing be smooth, and your late wife smile forevermore. because you're not just an admiral, you're a bona fide seaman. Until next time, I encourage you to subscribe if you'd like to see more partner-only challenges on this channel, as the TT Ready remake approaches ever more closely. This has been Phantom A, and I thank you for watching.